Good afternoon, colleagues. Yes, so my presentation is looking at the impact of the I491 mutation on the uptake as well as the outcomes of BPaLM Regimen in Eswatini. I think several presenters, I'm happy they've already explained a lot about the I491F mutation. So I don't have any conflict of interest. Just to take you a bit about Eswatini, I think today now I know about Namibia. So Eswatini is a small population, about 1.2 million. It's still among the 30 countries with the highest TB-HIV burden. It has high TB-HIV co-infection, 65%, slightly higher above DRTB-HIV co-infection. The prevalence for HIV is very high. We have the highest in the world, about a quarter, that is 25%. In terms of our TB diagnostics and service organization, we have actually decentralized our gene experts. We have the 6-color, we also have the 10-color, we have 2 culture labs, we have our MIGIT, we have our line probe assay, we've also introduced sequencing. In terms of TB services, we have decentralized our TB treatment sites as well as our DRTB treatment sites. Then in terms of rifampicin resistance and MDR-TB incidence, our prevalence is actually around 5% in new cases, 44% in retreatment cases, quite high. Our incidence is 18 per 100,000 population, but despite decentralizing or introducing most of the WHO recommended diagnostic techniques, we still have a very low treatment coverage, which is 33%. That means we are actually missing around 67% of rifampicin resistance TB cases. And some of the reasons I will highlight. So it was not until we had our first drug research survey in 2009 where we realized we actually had a mutation, I think already mentioned by some of my colleagues, I491F mutation, which actually occurs outside the 81 base pair. It is uncommon, as they have highlighted, but when you look at Eswatini, it looks like it's common. Around that time, the prevalence was around 30%, and unfortunately, all the available rapid diagnostic tests, that is the gene expert, the line probe assay, could not pick up this strain. As well as the MIGIT could not pick up that strain. And then when we conducted our second DRS in 2018, we realized that the prevalence was now higher. It had actually doubled, indicating that there is actually continued transmission. Also, that meant 58% of true rifampicin-resistant individuals were actually incorrectly diagnosed as rifampicin susceptible by gene experts. So that meant in terms of treatment, they were actually on suboptimal treatment. So these are some of the challenges with this mutation. At first, we thought we were only dealing with rifampicin resistance, but unfortunately, it also correlates to resistance to bedaquiline and clofazimine. The mechanism really is not known, and this was our concern as a country because we had actually rolled out BPaLM Regimen to the whole country. So our worry was if there is bedaquiline resistance, so are we really giving effective regimens to our patients? Unfortunately, there is limited evidence on the clinical significance of this mutation. So what we did, we reviewed our programmatic data for all patients who were actually initiated on BPaLM regimen just to assess whether this I491F mutation existed and also looked at the outcomes of these patients. So Eswatini, we've actually introduced targeted next generation sequencing because we had no choice. actually. So it's part of our algorithm. And again, we're guided by our DRS results, because one thing we picked up was that 94% of these rifampicin-resistant TB strains harboring this mutation, actually, when we do the LPA or when you do midget, they are picked up to have isoniazid resistance. It can be INH mono, it can be polydrug resistance. So we actually included these samples as eligible for sequencing. Then for BPaLM, same applies. Those who had confirmed rifampicin resistance were eligible for BPaLM, but we also included presumed for a reason, because some of our patients actually with INH mono or PDR could have missed MDR from the beginning. So our clinicians knew about that, so if they failed or for some reasons they are not doing well, they were also included. So majority of our patients actually were males and HIV positive, and in terms of previous history, actually we had quite a number who were new patients. So common resistance type, actually according to the case registration by the clinicians, we actually had the confirmed, we still had the presumed, and our INH mono. So 250 patients we actually reviewed, and 177 were eligible for BPaLM. The uptake was around 83%, and only a third had sequencing done. That was a gap there. But when you looked at those who had sequencing results, we realized that about 60% actually had the I491F mutation, and of these, 69% had additional resistance to bedaquiline and clofazimine. And we actually looked at the treatment outcomes. We looked at 147 patients who were enrolled on BPaLM. And the treatment success, when I include the still on treatment, were around 73. But when we exclude, treatment outcomes were actually good, 90%. And when we now include the I491F status, we realized that even if they had the I491F, treatment outcomes were actually good, without comparable. But when they didn't have the TNGS result, slightly lower, but not significant. So in conclusion, we realize, yes, the prevalence of this I491F mutation is high, and the concerns with the additional resistance to bedaquiline and clofazimine resistance is also still high, about 69%. Yes, we did this retrospective review. We did not see any significance, but we think it's something that we need to look further. Maybe in terms of the numbers could be an issue, because as we are now looking at the sequencing results, we had a lot of more patients who didn't have results. But I guess these are also limitations of programmatic data. So I just want to acknowledge the Ministry of Health, our partners, our patients, and the healthcare workers. Thank you.